Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's not waste any time because we have Henry Selick with us right here, right now. And he's here to talk about his latest feature film, Wendell and Wild.
Whoa! I'm having a vision!
A green-headed girl.
She seems so real. Greetings. We are the magician morticians, the artistes of the afterlife. So, as your masters, we order you to turn around and,
You're tripping.
For anyone who bizarrely doesn't know Henry, let's just remind you some of his greatest hits. We've got The Nightmare Before Christmas. We've got James and the Giant Peach, my absolute favourite. We've got Monkey Bone, Coraline, and now Wendell and Wild. Henry, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
I hope so. I mean, you're back in the director's seat now with a stop motion masterclass. I really mean that in Wendell and Wild. Why is your heart constantly called back to stop motion?
I've tried all the other types of animation. I mean, I was for a few years a Disney animator back when it was all hand drawn. But there's just something about real objects, puppets, whatever, clay being hand manipulated and brought to life that is always going to bring me back. It's the oldest type of animation, and I think it's got the strongest magic.
Strongest magic, wow. in that sense, like, do you mean? Well, actually, what do you mean by that? I'm curious in terms of magic. Like, what would you extrapolate from that?
Okay, well, it was the first type of animation when film was invented, and they would shift things around or move them, and someone could magically slide or glide. That's stop motion animation. So it was an illusion, and that's what magicians do, and it's create illusions. And I think that it's the fact is it's humans breathing life into these puppets, a frame at a time. But it's not like any other animation where there's assistants or computers to do in-betweens and you can move forward and back. It's really an actual performance done very slowly, straight ahead, where you have your plan and you might know all the poses you're going to hit, but you do have to then step off the cliff onto that tight rope and cross Niagara Falls and get there to the other side.
I love that.
Yeah. So I think it's very risky. It's other types of animation don't have the same risk. It's very physical. You're physically, your whole body's involved, and there's just this connection direct from the animator to the puppet that's not like anything else. So I just think it's the most magical. It's also relates to something I've said before, but I believe that almost all kids, when they're little, they have a favorite toy, or maybe they have a group of toys, stuffed animals or carved something, and they talk to it and they believe it's alive. They have conversations, and in their mind, they bring that object to life. They think of it as being alive. So I think that that's also part of why I believe that this is the most magical. It goes back to that conjuring when we're kids of life in our inanimate objects, and take it to the point where we literally are making them come to life, at least the illusion of life.
I get what you mean, like literal magic. And, thinking back on early films like The Haunted Hotel, I think it was called. And people literally were looking for the string to see how they moved the knives and everything. But I really love that idea. And it's something that I think about in terms of stop motion. Like, it has the strongest sense of, you see the artist's hand on screen, like literally on screen, often in thumbprints and, the hair boiling. Especially in Aardman stuff, you see the clay moving around on Wallace and Gromit's face, But let's talk then in terms of Wendell and Wild. I did see some thumbprints on a cream, but one of the biggest things for me was the lines, for face swapping that you seem to have left in. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, going back to Coraline, that was, traditionally we've always done a mix of replacement faces to get a character to change expressions or speak. And that goes way back to before my time. George Powell did that, decades and decades ago in the last century. And we kind of built on that starting Nightmare Before Christmas. With Jack Skellington, though, every single expression of his, we just had rows and rows of heads. Every expression, a raised brow, a smile, a scowl, was a separate sculpture with in-betweens to go in and out of it. So by the time we got to Coraline, we realized, well, two things we realized. If we split the face into two parts, we can get way more range of expressions without quite so many separate, complete sculptures. So that, the brows and eyes have their own thing, mouths have their other thing. The other innovation on Coraline was that everything had previously been hand sculpted, every single step. For this, I figured, well, we'll sculpt the key expressions and then capture those, put them in the computer, and use the computer to create some in-betweens and then print them, because 3D printing had just been invented. And that's the first time it was used, as far as I know, in an animated film. But at the end of the day, we had, beautiful, expressive facial animation on the characters that had replacement faces. But there was be a seam line. And actually on Coraline, I wanted to leave the seam line in then as well, because I saw that everyone noticed it at first, and then they weren't thinking about it after like 5 minutes. But I couldn't quite win over the people in power. But I'd always planned to no, I'm gonna leave those in. I want to kind of prove how this movie was made, that how it's made isn't all hidden away. I wanted to sort of have evidence of it. And I think the audience needs to work a little bit to make the magic real, but then the movie means more to them. It's not just a completely pre-processed experience where everything's perfect and they don't have to do any kind of work at all to make it the film work. So anyway, that was very it's kind of like, if you make stop motion so perfect that it looks like computer animation, what's the point? Just do it as computer animation. So I wanted to emphasize the stop motionness and leave in the mistakes, leave in the seam. There's a mix. There's some really crude effects mixed with some sophisticated ones, but I kind of like that. I just I'm a huge fan of Aardman. I can't believe they've managed to keep their studio going forever, and always innovative, and love the idea of thumbprints in the clay. They've been very inspiring, they've done.
In terms of this, I love seeing the seam lines. I really do. It's like you can feel the experience of thought weighed on the screen with those kind of decisions. Like something else that jumped out with me is, what shots to put where, and what in terms of how do you build this world, what are you choosing to animate? Like a van rolling over ice and breaking that ice. Someone has to sit down and animate all that, or hair flapping from a breeze in a door, the door is just slammed shut.
I'm glad you noticed that. Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I love. And that's the question I want to pose to you then is, how do you choose those elements like to focus on? Are you just trying to build out the world, or is it here's a moment to just have a little bit of fun?
So some things are pre-planned, like that van going over the broken ice is pre-planned. It's sort of you're looking for places to pepper the story and the scenes with little detail moments that then inform the whole scene around it. It's not useful or practical to show a wide shot of the van breaking through ice puddle after ice puddle, and wouldn't have any meaning unless it was a huge part of the story. So you look for those moments to bring the world to life. I'd say that it's more than just the puppets in a dead world. I'm always looking for flickering lights from firelight, for maybe cloud patterns. It's a full moon, but there's clouds and they're moving on the ground. Breeze has caught a few trees in the background. So, one of my big things is to make the world come to life, and it's these sort of details that can do it. But it's also sometimes just a great animator, like the door shuts and a moment later, Manberg's hair wafts, and that's just the animator Kim Blanchett. That was just they edited that, and I'm so glad they did. And they had the timing just right, that it took a moment for the wind to move across the room.
Yeah, no, it was masterful, and that's the in such a detail oriented medium. I mean, you're really achieving what animation does best, which is like anything it wants to do. There's a great quote, I don't know who said it, but it's like, okay, this is amazing because we can do anything. And it's like, oh no, this is terrifying because we can do anything, And where do you draw that line? Because you really push design to a fundamentally different place to what I've seen in terms of stop motion. Obviously with Leica stuff, you do see beautiful styles of the artists, but in this, you've got Pablo Lobato, who has these beautiful character designs that you've somehow captured very well and managed to make it into a 3D maquette,
Yeah, Pablo Lobato is a brilliant artist, and I reached out to him because in the earliest stages, when after I'd first met our two key voice actors, and then ultimately with Jordan Peele, a co-creator and a producer, that I wanted it to be caricatures of those guys. I just didn't want it to be sort of stupid caricatures. Just there's so many bad caricatures of political cartoons or caricatures, and they can be fun and so forth. But I wanted it to be a little more artistic, and both Jordan and Keegan-Michael Key, who plays the other demon, they're the very successful comedy duo in the past. They were a little hesitant about this. They thought it might not work, and I said it's going to work. And I connected with Pablo. He was in Los Angeles at a time when I was in Los Angeles. He's from Argentina, and we met and we talked, and he started doing some work, and I said, well, I could pay you something myself. I said, no. I want to do this. No one's asked me to work on a film before. So he did some marvelous early sketches and designs. See, Pablo's work, it is very graphic. It's you could say very almost Picasso-esque, but his caricatures, I'm telling you look him up and he's done celebrities and politicians, and then he does some other just for art's sake. I think they're the most beautiful and artistic caricatures, and they really capture the essence of someone. You can't believe someone could be turned into circles and triangles and absolutely be them. So anyway, it started with the idea that I wanted them to be caricatures, and then we ended up doing for a couple of other characters as well. Father Best's based on James Hong. James Hong is 93 years old.
Wow.
He's been in more movies and TV shows than anyone in history, and he's still working. He's so much fun, and I felt like I wanted to capture him as well. So it did present. It was very challenging at first. I thought that at first I was like, will all our characters need to sort of be like bas relief? And so our very first scene was the demons in the underworld. The first scene of the movie. They're planting the hair plugs and, imbibe the hair cream and have this out of body experience, this vision. So for that, I really wanted to stick to this. See how two dimensional can we make it so that their faces are always kind of flat to camera with their bodies moving around it, and it worked, and that's how they look in the underworld. But then I got Pablo to experiment with, well, could we hold on to that in the land of the living, hold on to his design, but make it more fully dimensional. And he was able to transition to that look as well. And so it still looks like his designs, but we didn't have to do this bas relief for everything, because I think that would have been tiresome. It's like it's just one of those things that, like, it works beautifully for the amount of time we use it, but it would, it could be tiresome if every character in the whole film had to do the same. So it's kind of a good mix. But since he was the first, and his look and his designs came first of the characters, that informed the whole world around them, the look of the whole world, which our production designer, the main one was Lou Romano, and then our lead illustrator, Kenny Leoncito. They sort of followed what Pablo did to design the look of the sets and the exteriors and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting because you definitely see the design aesthetic filter through everything. Like, I know they have those stripy lines for their beards and stuff. And then you see it on other characters' eyebrows or Cat's hair, all the little dots and stuff. The aesthetic carries across very well. And I totally get what you mean by how tiresome it could get. It can be very hard to pull off something that's like 2.5D, I think they call it, like something Bretislav Poyar would do. It totally works. It's really, really beautiful. And is this correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the first film you're actually directing that's based on your own material?
It's the first one that got finished.
Okay, very good answer. Yeah.
There was another one that went pretty far down the line called The Shadow King.
Yes, yeah.
And then we don't need. I mean, I have 5 minutes of finished footage. I think it's great, but it was with Disney, and they hadn't learned what they should have learned from Nightmare, that yes, it's not quite Disney, but it will become Disney when people love it. But that one wasn't completed, and it may be something I can revive now. But this is the first one based on my own original story that I wrote many, many years ago. And I have two sons. They're both men now, but when they were little, they would act like demons and do demonic things. I mean, not obvious, just bad stuff.
They'd fly around backwards around the house. Yeah. Like, hold on.
And I did a sketch of them and as demons, and then I wrote a story and put it away until years and years later when I was watching this great new comedy show, Key and Peele. And after 3 years of watching and loving and seeing those two performers, the range of their performance abilities and the range of their imaginations and the stories, it just suddenly, wait a minute, oh, that's the demons right there. And went from there to meeting Key and Peele, and then Jordan saying, it turned out Jordan Peele is a huge fan of stop motion animation, knows all about it. The logo for his company, Monkey Paw, is a stop motion piece. And and that led to one of the best collaborations of my life. He really contributed so much to adjusting characters and to the story. But yeah, it's the first original one.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Yeah.
That Key and Peele were incredible. That was my college days when I was watching them, or just post. I think I was doing my master's or something, and I found their grasp of film aesthetic to be incredibly powerful. Like, the range of their performances, but also the visual levity they're able to bring to each scene. They totally embed it in whatever genre it needs to be in terms of its aesthetic, and I find that so powerful. Now we're talking about Wendell and Wild. You've got, this underworld, you've got the human world, and you've got all these cultural aesthetics baked into these worlds, in terms of, how you're using the camera or the art that appears on screen. How much of the collaboration was in that with you guys, or was that something that you talked more about the art team? Or
I'd say that the collaboration, with Jordan was just more about story and tone. He has an unerring sense of tone, of what's right for a particular project. And I don't think we would have set this movie up if it wasn't for the fact that he went out and directed an incredibly successful first film called Get Out, a horror film, and proved he had the chops as a director.
Big time.
So he, I showed him lots of visual things, but he was always more about story, tone, character, nudging me a little bit, saying, well, let's not make that the point. Because that could be like he was always like aware of like danger flags. It's like, our film, there'll be, people of different races and ethnicities, but it's not about that. And so we don't want to ever make it about that. And even the real world ties to, the juvie justice system or these private prisons. It's important, but the film's not about those things. So he was like the tone master of adjusting tonalities for characters. But for how everything evolved visually, it was more the me and the art team, that me and Pablo and the Kenny and Lou, someone we brought in later, Robin Joseph, who kind of designed the backgrounds, the clouds, the skies, and gave an overall kind of a color script to the film. We've got a lot of purple, we got a lot of green, and how do we use it well, and things like that.
Yeah, totally. Don't overblow things, because then it doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah. I think so. We're coming up on Halloween now. How do you feel about this time of year? You're going to start hearing your favorite songs again, or what's it like to be Henry Selick at Halloween? That's my question.
It's my time. I feel, I certainly as a kid, I loved to dress up, and my mom would help make costumes, and she kind of liked scary films, nothing extreme, but she so I have it gives me a very warm feeling, going, linking me back to my childhood. I remember after I'd say it was a couple of years after Nightmare Before Christmas came out. Nightmare Before Christmas, we made it at a pretty low budget, and it made its money, and then it's kind of gone, and it's sort of sad. It's gone, but then I'd be the one at home giving out the candy because my wife was taking our young sons out with their friends, and then kids started showing up in costumes of characters. There's little Lock, Shock, and Barrels and Sally and Jack, and every year there were more of them. So I also have this special fondness, like, wow, something me and the crew worked on many years ago has this other life, and the people have taken hold of it. And it's also happen with Coraline, to a degree. I remember we have these things in the U.S. pumpkin patches, where they set up and they sell pumpkins, to carve for Halloween, and they put up scares and things. I remember one year the local pumpkin patch, it was all James the Giant Peach characters, big cutouts.
Yeah.
It's I have a actual fondness, just from my own personal history, and then from working on a couple of projects that somehow made a bigger connection, a longer lasting, that lasts longer than just a movie coming out the first time. So yeah, I love it. I love Halloween. Cool. Kids getting to dress up as their heroes or become powerful or scary as hell. And I think it's a great tradition.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I wish you all the luck with Wendell and Wild. I know you've poured a ton of time and heart and soul into it. So congratulations, it's out there. Let's hear what everyone has to say about it, and let's hope and pray it finds legs like the other films that you've done.
Yes, we hope it finds legs.
Long two-dimensional legs. Anyways, thank you so much for your time, Henry, and good luck.